I live in a small farming town just a small ways from England. It's not on any map, but if you were able to find it, you would not notice anything odd on the surface level. Though there are two main oddities in my town, they are the very early curfew and the town doctor. For now, I want to center my story around the town doctor. First thing I would say, he's a great doctor, hands down best alive and dead. He's known in our town to be able to heal nearly any wound and cure any disease. The thing about the doctor that made him odd is how he looks. I know some will say not to judge, but no one in town knew what he looked like. Let me explain before this sounds like the ramblings of a madman. Yes, he had a physical form, but he dressed like a plague doctor. To further explain the situation, he wore a white plague doctor's mask with black glazed eyes so no one could see in. And it never came off. The rest of his attire was the blackest skin-tight leather with no seeable zippers or seams. That was covered by a matching black velvet cloak. Even though he dressed in a way that was quite frightening, everyone in town would say he was a kind, jovial man who kept to himself. The odd contrasting nature of this man continues. Even though his physical form looked frail and weak, he was far from it. To share an example, a local farmer was trapped under his tractor and he was able to lift it high enough by himself to get him out from under it. The second example is when a bull ran through town square and ran at the doctor. He only put out one hand and the bull stopped on a dime the instant its head touched his hand. Now you may ask, why does no one comment on the incident about the doctor? Well, I asked my father this very statement multiple times in my life. The first time I asked him, I was a young child. I asked him why he looks the way he does. My father responded nervously, "No one knows, but it's thought it's a health issue." The second time, I was a teenager and asked him about the odd incidents around the doctor. His response was, "I didn't hear about that, and it'll probably just look that way in the moment." The third was on his deathbed. I asked, "You know something about the doctor?" I asked, "Why don't you say anything?" In his raspy, he responded with, "I know nothing of what you speak, and no one knows." That was the final words. Now days have passed, and my father's final words haunt me. Do people actually know nothing, or do they plead ignorance? I've scoured the town's archives and made a startling discovery. There is no documents of the doctor, but when I noticed the old town photos, I'd always see the doctor in the photos. My fear and wondering was soon interrupted by the librarian, or so I thought, whispering 6 words. "If you are afraid, do not look in the endless void." I jumped up, but I saw no one around. Scared, I ran out. As my mind swirled in my head, I thought one thing I needed to know, the answer I seek. The next day I went to the doctor. I framed it as a standard checkup. He looked me over and smiled. "I see nothing wrong with you. You have a clear bill of health," he said in his jovial way. He paused for a second before speaking again. "But I know that it is not what you seek." Dumbstruck, I could only vocalize a whimper, and in that moment the color of my face left. The doctor said, "I know you are curious. You were curious when you were young, just like your father." He then sighed. "Is this what you want?" All I could do in that moment was nod. He then said in a very well, then took off his mask. What I saw will be burnt in my mind and soul. It was no man. All I saw was nothing, but it was not nothing. It was every ounce of pain, fear, serenity, and joy, distorted in a legion of thought. In that moment I saw my death and understood my father's words. He was and is the Pale Rider, the physical embodiment of death itself.